June 20th, 2025. A seemingly ordinary date, soon to be etched in history. The night the Middle East and the world changed, irrevocably altering the geopolitical landscape. It began with a flash, an unexpected burst of light that pierced the darkness, then another, confirming that this was no mere anomaly, and another, escalating the situation from concerning to critical. Social media exploded, a torrent of information, speculation, and raw fear, with videos of Tehran's skies capturing the unfolding drama in shaky, citizen-shot footage, lit by silent, terrifying explosions, painting a surreal and horrifying picture, and interceptor missiles desperately trying to stem the tide of destruction. Air raid sirens wailed across the city, their mournful cries amplifying the sense of impending doom, panic spreading like wildfire through the streets. As chaos unfolded, revealing the fragility of order. Was it an accident, a catastrophic system failure, a coup, a sudden grab for power from within? No, this was war. The unthinkable had become reality. Simultaneously, Israel's Iron Dome, a symbol of protection, and Arrow missile defenses, its more advanced counterpart, streaked the skies above Tel Aviv, a desperate attempt to shield the city. And Jerusalem, the heart of the nation, intercepting a barrage, a relentless assault from the skies. Of Iranian missiles, a clear declaration of war. Citizens rushed to bomb shelters, seeking refuge from the storm above. The grim routine of conflict returning, a familiar dread settling in. The shadow war between Iran and Israel, a conflict fought in the shadows for years, had erupted into open, violent confrontation, shattering the fragile peace. In Tehran, the center of Iranian power, state media flickered, attempting to maintain control of the narrative. With martial music, a show of strength and defiance, and images of Supreme Leader Khamenei, a symbol of unwavering resolve. In Israel, the seat of Israeli governance, Prime Minister Netanyahu, the nation's leader, was rushed to military headquarters to coordinate the nation's defense. The world held its breath, paralyzed by the unfolding events, watching a conflict, a potential powder keg about to ignite. That had simmered for decades, threatening to boil over at any moment, explode in real time, broadcast across the globe. The initial hours, shrouded in darkness, were a blur, a whirlwind of conflicting information, of unconfirmed reports, fueling speculation and uncertainty, and official denials, attempting to control the narrative. But the truth emerged, slowly, painstakingly. The explosions in Iran, their cause initially shrouded in mystery, were precise, targeted strikes, meticulously planned and executed. On its nuclear program, a crippling blow to its ambitions. Iran's retaliation was swift, predictable, yet terrifying. Long-range missiles, instruments of destruction, screamed toward Israel, carrying the promise of devastation. Two regional superpowers, locked in a bitter rivalry, were now locked, inextricably bound, in a direct, brutal exchange, a dance of death. The world became a spectator, a helpless observer, to a war, a conflict with the potential to engulf the region, with global implications threatening to destabilize the world order. How did it come to this? Intelligence reports warned Iran was days from a nuclear breakout. For Israel, this was an existential red line. Diplomacy had failed. Under cover of darkness, Israeli F-35 Yadir stealth fighters struck Iran's nuclear bunkers with surgical precision. The goal: decapitate Iran's nuclear program before it could cross the threshold. Iran's response was immediate and massive. A barrage of ballistic and cruise missiles targeting Israeli military bases and infrastructure. Some missiles broke through Israel's defenses, shattering its sense of invincibility. The conflict widened as Iran activated Hezbollah. From Lebanon, thousands of rockets rained on northern Israel, opening a second front. Israeli border towns emptied as sirens blared and rockets fell. Israel now faced a nightmare scenario, a multi-front war against Iran and its most powerful proxy. In Washington, D.C., the White House, a symbol of American power and leadership, was a hive of activity, buzzing with urgent discussions and strategic planning. President Trump convened the National Security Council, a critical gathering of top advisors. They were weighing options, carefully considering every angle, to prevent a regional catastrophe, a descent into wider conflict that could destabilize the entire Middle East. The decision acted decisively, to send a clear message of deterrence, but in the shadows, avoiding overt escalation. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, the apex of American air power, launched from Missouri, their departure a closely guarded secret, joined by F-35S, the cutting edge of fighter technology, from Gulf bases, already positioned for rapid response, and the USS Gerald R. Ford, a symbol of naval might. Their mission crippled Iran's ability to project power and destabilize the region, to wage wider war, to prevent further escalation of the conflict, not to join Israel's fight, but to prevent the conflict from spiraling out of control, but to contain it, to limit the scope and intensity of the conflict. U.S. strikes targeted IRGC command centers, the nerve centers of Iranian military operations, missile launch sites, critical for projecting power beyond Iran's borders, and naval bases, aiming for strategic paralysis, disrupting Iran's ability to coordinate military actions. The message to Iran: do not widen this war, do not miscalculate the resolve of the United States or target American assets. To Israel, support, but also restraint, exercise caution in your response. America was now managing the escalation, attempting to walk a tightrope between deterrence and de-escalation. To the world, the U.S. remained the ultimate military power, a force to be reckoned with in the region. The strikes were surgical, minimizing collateral damage, a demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. The world waited, holding its breath, to see if the message, delivered with such force, had been heard. The ghosts of the night sky, the stealth bombers unseen and unheard by most, had delivered their warning. Now, the next move belonged to Tehran. The risk of escalation, of miscalculation, and unintended consequences loomed over every decision. The region braced, holding its breath for what would come next. Before the bombs, a silent war raged in cyberspace. U.S. Cyber Command and Israel's Unit 8200 launched a massive cyber offensive, crippling Iranian military communications and power grids. Financial networks funding proxies like Hezbollah were frozen, sowing chaos at the worst possible moment for Tehran. Iranian commanders found their systems down, their radars spoofed, their trust in technology shattered. Meanwhile, U.S. Special Operations Forces moved in the shadows, reconnoitering Iranian sites, designating targets, and hunting Quds Force commanders. Their mission: disrupt Iranian special forces and proxy operations, especially in Syria and Iraq. The Shadow War was a deadly game of cat and mouse, far from the headlines but central to the conflict's outcome. Cyber attacks and covert raids paralyzed Iran's ability to coordinate and retaliate. The digital and shadow battlefields were as decisive as the skies above. In this war, silence and secrecy were as lethal as bombs. The air war, with its precision strikes and overwhelming force, was only the beginning, a prelude to a much larger and potentially more devastating operation. Within 48 hours, as the clock ticked relentlessly onward, the Pentagon ordered a massive deployment, a surge of manpower and equipment, to the Middle East, signaling a significant escalation of the crisis. The 82nd Airborne, renowned for their rapid deployment capabilities, and the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit, battle-hardened and ready for action, arrived in Kuwait, their boots hitting the ground with a purpose, signaling the U.S. was ready, unequivocally, for a ground war if needed, a commitment etched in the sand. Armored brigades, the heavy hitters of the ground forces, artillery, the long-range thunder of the battlefield, and tanks followed, a relentless tide of steel creating a formidable force, a display of military might on Iran's doorstep, a clear message of deterrence. Satellite images showed, with chilling clarity, a logistical buildup, a massive undertaking, tents, vehicles and supplies, a sprawling network of support for thousands, a city of soldiers rising from the desert. Analysts speculated, their voices echoing across news channels. Was the U.S. preparing, meticulously planning, for a limited incursion into Iran, a surgical strike, or a larger operation in Lebanon, a broader regional intervention? The scale suggested, undeniably, Washington was ready, fully prepared for a sustained high-intensity conflict, a long and arduous campaign. This show of force, this overwhelming display of power, was meant to deter Iran, to dissuade any aggressive actions, but it also made, inadvertently, U.S. troops a tempting target, vulnerable to attack. For American soldiers, thrust into this volatile situation, it was a tense, sudden mobilization, a rapid shift to a war footing, into one of the world's most dangerous and most volatile regions, a tinderbox waiting for a spark. Their mission was undefined, ambiguous, a hammer waiting for orders, poised to strike. The world watched with bated breath, wondering if that hammer, that instrument of war, would build peace, forge a lasting stability, or shatter the region, plunging it into further chaos. The gathering storm in Kuwait, a tempest brewing on the horizon, was a stark warning, a clear indication that the conflict could escalate rapidly and unpredictably, From airstrikes, a rain of fire from the sky, to a bloody ground campaign, a brutal and protracted struggle. Every move was under constant the watchful eyes, the ever-present gaze of Iranian drones and satellites, a network of surveillance. The next phase of war, the impending storm, was poised to begin, hanging heavy in the air. The Iran-Israel war was never just about two countries. Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, unleashed its arsenal on Israel as soon as the first bombs fell. Thousands of rockets targeted Israeli cities, military bases, and infrastructure, overwhelming defenses and sowing terror. Northern Israel became a war zone with mass evacuations and the economy grinding to a halt. Israel responded with a massive air campaign, but Hezbollah's assets were embedded in civilian areas, making every strike a potential tragedy. Ground clashes erupted along the border, with Israeli commandos hunting rocket crews in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah's battle-hardened fighters fought back fiercely, turning the conflict into a brutal counterinsurgency. The specter of a full-scale Israeli ground invasion of Lebanon loomed, threatening to drag the entire country into chaos. The second front was open, and the war was spiraling out of control. The world's great powers watched, calculating their moves. In Moscow, Russia called for a ceasefire but quietly maneuvered to protect its assets in Syria and expand its influence. US planners worried about accidental clashes with Russian forces, especially if Russia used its advanced air defenses to shield Iranian assets. The risk of direct confrontation between nuclear powers was real. China, meanwhile, viewed the crisis through an economic lens. Dependent on Iranian oil, Beijing feared a shutdown of the Persian Gulf and a global energy crisis. China called for restraint, but its leverage was economic, not military. Both Russia and China saw opportunity to portray the US as a destabilizer and accelerate the shift to a multipolar world. If America got bogged down, it would distract from the Indo-Pacific, China's true focus. The Iran-Israel war became a global chess match, with every move watched by rival superpowers. The war's most immediate global impact, the threat to the world's energy supply. The Strait of Hormuz, the planet's oil choke point, became a battleground. Iran's IRGC Navy harassed shipping, deployed mines, and threatened to close the strait. Oil prices surged, global markets panicked, and gas prices spiked worldwide. The US and allies launched Operation Sentinel, escorting tankers through dangerous waters. Tense encounters with Iranian boats and drones risked catastrophic escalation. Iran's strategy inflicted economic pain, hoping to fracture the international coalition. By threatening oil supplies, Tehran aimed to pressure Europe and Asia to push for de-escalation. The strait became a front line, where missiles, oil prices, and global stability collided. The world's economy now hung in the balance. The future is terrifyingly unwritten. The conflict has metastasized into a multi-front war with global consequences. Shockwaves are spreading far beyond the Middle East. Security agencies in Europe brace for terror attacks. Diplomatic efforts are paralyzed. Trust has evaporated. Both Iran and Israel see their existence at stake, making compromise nearly impossible. President Trump faces a fateful choice: escalate or risk appearing weak. The most dangerous scenarios, attacks on US warships, Russian jets, or European cities, are no longer unthinkable. The world stands on a precipice, watching every move in Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington. Every decision now will ripple for years to come. The story of the Iran-Israel war of 2025 is still being written, and no one knows how it will end.